Hello, hello. We're back again for another LinkedIn Live, where today in my Summer of Growth series, we're going to be talking about a really important concept, the concept of strategic networking. Welcome to today's program, wherever you are in the world. I'm here in Denver, Colorado, from my home studio, joining you today. How many of you today, or let's say within the last 24 hours, connected with someone new on LinkedIn? How many of you shared or commented on something in your LinkedIn feed? How many of you made a new connection outside of social media? You found someone new to start forming a strategic networking relationship with. Well, if you haven't gotten active in social media and social networking and even online networking or in-person networking, you're in the right place because today we're talking about networking in a strategic sense. I'm going to spend the next 30 minutes unpacking tons of resources for you. The idea behind the Summer of Growth series that I've started here on LinkedIn Live is to give you concentrated information to help you grow your brand, grow your career, and grow your life. So today we're talking strategic networking. I wanted to give you a heads up that in 2 weeks on July 20th, at the same time, we're going to go live again and talk about online positioning, online branding. So mark your calendars for that. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Lita Citroen, and I'm pretty big here on LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time posting content. I've got 8 courses in the LinkedIn Learning Library. So if any of you have participated in my LinkedIn Learning programs, feel free to mention which course in the chat that you've participated in and what you thought of it. I'm a reputation management and personal branding specialist. So I'm an executive coach for professionals and executives and entrepreneurs who are really passionate about building their voice, building their presence in specific target markets. In addition to LinkedIn Learning, I'm a TEDx speaker. I've done talks at Google, and I'm a keynote and workshop presenter around the country. I've authored 5 books. I'm going to selfishly brag about my 2 latest, Control the Narrative, which is an executive's guide to building, pivoting, and repairing your reputation. And then recently, my book, Reputation 360, Jumpstart Your Career by Building a Positive Personal Brand, is actually a reinvention of my very first book. So really excited to be with you. And today I'm going to talk about 5 important points related to strategic networking. First, we're going to talk about what is strategic networking. It's this term that so many people use, but we don't know what it means. Second, how does networking work? So I'm going to unpack some different ways that networking has worked. Number 3, I'm going to share with you the 4 people you need to have in your network to make it work for you. Number 4, I'm going to talk about how do you want them to know you? How do you set an intention of the kind of reputation you want with your network? And last, number 5, I'm going to talk about how do you break the ice? How do you get conversations started? So let's jump in. First, what is strategic networking? So often people think that strategic networking is just the people you know or the people who know you. And sure, we've got, people we know on social media. We've got people we know through school and in our training, people from jobs previous and current. We've got people we know online. We've got friends and family. But your strategic network are the people that you intentionally set out to form relationship with. So these aren't random contacts. These are intentional, thoughtful, and strategic contacts. And whether you manage that in some type of a CRM or stakeholder management system, you manage it in Outlook, you manage it on Post-it notes, I really don't care. But your strategic network takes a lot of work. So managing those contacts is really important. It's also a relationship. While these relationships and these contacts are strategic, it's an important relationship. And we have to think about our network as relationships, meaning there's nurturing, there's curating, there's investing, and there's reciprocity. Reciprocity is a tricky one when it comes to networking because oftentimes people think, well, I don't have anything to offer, so how can I reciprocate if someone in my network does something for me? Well, the name of the game is you have to reciprocate. Think of networking as as a set of scales. We always want the scales to be balanced. If somebody does for me, then I want to be able to reciprocate. If I do for someone, then I want them to reciprocate. But while it's reciprocal, networking is not about quid pro quo. Let's say I help Joe, or let me pick on somebody, Andrea. Let's say I help Andrea, who's also here in Colorado, find a job, right? I'm part of her network. I help her find a job. Well, Andrea doesn't now need to be worried about helping me find a job. I have a job, but she has to do something that reciprocates, something that creates equal balanced value. So some of the things she might think about are a handwritten thank you note, right? She might send me a really cool handwritten thank you note detailing what it is I helped her with and showing her appreciation. And thank you notes are underappreciated, they're under-recognized. I actually did a video on my YouTube channel all about how to do a really good thank you note. So hop over there when we're done if you want to understand that. But she has to do something of value to reciprocate. In addition to a thank you note, maybe she introduces me to someone who helps my network. Maybe she gives me a shout out on LinkedIn or somehow otherwise gives me an endorsement. The point is there has to be balance. And if I help somebody with something in a networking context, they need to balance that back out. Networking is all about value. It's about value creation and value exploitation. And keep in mind, this is not about being mean. This is not about doing something sinister, but we have to get value from each other. Otherwise, it's more sales than networking. So if I'm helping you with something, I have to get something of value back. And that value creation, value exploitation is why we call it strategic networking. Thinking about the people you know and how they can add value to you. So number 2, how does networking work? Well, it has to work. It's a lot of time. It's going to take a lot of effort. It's going to take a lot of strategy. So if it's not working and you're not seeing benefit and results, then you've sort of missed the point, and we may need to reassess. First of all, think about the kinds of jobs. Let's say you're in a job search and you're looking at growing into a career that you don't have a lot of skills for. Your network can provide informational interviews. They can actually coach and mentor and guide you and provide you with the information you need to be able to move into a new job. Maybe they can even give you an introduction or a referral. But if you're in a job search or you're looking to grow your career in your company, then your network can be a fabulous resource pool of people who can help you get there. When I've hired for my own company, referrals have been fabulous through my network. The first thing I'll do is I'll go to Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, or I'll send emails to people that I know and say, I'm looking to hire somebody with these skills. These are people who already know me. These are the skills I'm looking to hire for. Do you know anyone? And 9 out of 10 times, the people that I've hired have come through my network. So if you're looking to either hire for your company or, again, grow your own job, fabulous. What about if you're an entrepreneur like me, right? You're one of the brave and the few who's decided to build your own business. Well, the referrals, the word of mouth value of networking is fabulous. But that's going to require that you know what, and your network knows what it is you're looking for. So when we talk in a moment about positioning and branding, it's really important that your network knows how they can help you. In my business, 9 out of 10 of my clients, again, come through word of mouth. They come through the people that know me and know what I stand for and what I can offer, who hear of an opportunity and send it my way. Think about how much more efficient that is for marketing. Networking helps you grow and learn. You get exposed to new opportunities, new conversations, trends, insights that you might not otherwise have. And if your network isn't providing that for you, then perhaps you don't have the right people in your network. And finally, networking in a strategic sense works when it's not just your friends and family. I love my family. I love my friends, but I don't want to network with them the same that I do with people that I'm strategic about. I don't want to have business conversations at the holiday dinners. So think about networking in a different sense. It's not just the people who know you, it's the people you strategically are going to work with to give value and exploit value. So, number three, who are the people you should know? Well, there's four people that you should know in your network. And I talk about these in my books. I write about this. So maybe you've heard this before, but let me outline the four people that should be in your network. First, we need to know decision makers. And decision makers are kind of obvious, right? They're the people who can transact with us. In my case, a decision maker would be a client who might want to hire me for speaking or for coaching. In your case, a decision maker might be a recruiter or a hiring leader who can make a decision about the interview process and getting you on board in a company. A decision maker might also be your boss who can decide to advance you, give you additional resources, or hold you back. These are people who have a direct connection to a transaction. So they can write us a check, they can agree on something that we want. Their value to us is their ability to make decisions that impact our career. But there's other kinds of people we need to know. Second are what I call influencers. They may or may not be decision makers in your network. They may or may not have the ability to transact with you, but their circle of influence, the people that they know, the reach that they have, their ability to create value just by mentioning you or supporting you gives you opportunity. And oftentimes when we think of influencers, we think of social media influencers, right? People who have large followings on Instagram or something like that. And sure, that's a way to think about it, but I want you to think about it a little bit more meaningfully. So let's say you work in technology and you're looking to grow your career in another company um, outside of the work that you're doing now. Thinking about influencers who might have the ability to promote you to other companies, thinking about people who might have the ability to influence your boss if there's an opportunity that maybe you do want to stay, you just want a different role. Think about those technology influencers who you hear about, who are written about, who are known in your industry for having a voice that is recognized and valued by the people you're trying to reach. That's what we mean by influencers, not just numbers of followers, not just numbers of likes and things like that, but it's people whose word matters, whose voice matters. You might be an influencer for your network. That could actually be your value to your network, is that you have a really large reach when it comes to online presence or networking presence. It doesn't have to be online. The third category of people you need to meet, in addition to decision makers and influencers, the third is information sources. And information sources are really cool. There are people who, again, may never be decision makers, may not have a huge network, but they know stuff. And the stuff they know is valuable. I'll give you an example. Years ago, I went to a networking event and I met a gentleman. He was standing in the back of the room, hugging one of those high top tables because he hated the idea of being in a networking setting. And I introduced myself and found out that he was a researcher in a nanotechnology company. Little things, really, really tiny little things. And I'm not a science person, but he was so thrilled to explain to me what he did and who he served and all about the kind of research he was doing. And I decided he could be an information source for me. So we started networking. We connected on LinkedIn. I would send a message here and there. He would comment on something that I posted. I would do the same. It wasn't deep networking. I saw him periodically at events. It was really kind of cool. We always then had a familiar face and we stayed in touch. Well, fast forward a couple years, I have an opportunity to do a branding proposal for a fabric company. And the fabric company based their technology on nanotechnology. Well, again, I'm not a science person. I don't know much about science, but I know someone who does. And I was able to pick up the phone, have a meaningful conversation with my researcher friend all about this company and who their competitors were and what the market was moving towards. And he gave me so much competitive advantage just in that phone call that allowed me to be more proactive in this proposal. The point is, he wasn't a decision maker. He wasn't an obvious person that you would network with, but he was valuable to my ability to grow my career. Find information sources. Drop it in the chat. Do you have information sources in your network? Is most of your network decision makers? Let's see what most of you think. Go ahead and put it in the chat if you have a lot of information sources in your network today, or if most of your network is focused on decision makers. Well, the fourth category is a very unsung hero, and that's what we call cheerleaders. And man, if you can find a couple cheerleaders, you are so lucky, because cheerleaders are those people who may or may not ever be decision makers. Maybe they don't have a ton of influence or a lot of industry information, but when they speak and when they talk to us, we feel so supported. We feel boosted. We feel energized. And that's why I say, if you can find a couple people who are cheerleaders, nurture those relationships. I'll give you another example. So a few years ago, I went to a neighborhood association meeting for the homeowners, and I met a woman who had been with a large accounting firm for her career. And she'd been a stay-at-home mom, though, for the past probably 5 or 6 years. So she wasn't a decision maker. She was a stay-at-home mom. She didn't have a ton of influence because her world was centered around raising her children. She didn't have a ton of information that was current and relevant, but being around her and talking to her and sharing what I was doing, she was so encouraging and so positive. And she loved the idea of having a connection to another adult who was in the business world. And I intentionally put her into my network as a cheerleader, because in those times when I'm feeling low or I'm feeling like I need a boost, she's there to give it to me. She's there to remind me of everything that I do professionally that's valuable and meaningful, and all the people I serve. Having these four people in your network, decision makers who can transact with us, influencers whose voice carries a lot of weight and credibility, information sources who can provide us with background and information, and cheerleaders. If you can get all four of those people in your network, you're ready to go. And what I would suggest doing to start off is look at the people you strategically network with and categorize them. I was doing this work with a client the other day, and we realized how many influencers this person knew, but they really didn't know decision makers. They misunderstood the difference between being an influencer and a decision maker. So we had to strategically find ways to build up that side of their networking strategy, and simply listing everybody that they spent time curating and cultivating relationships with, and then categorizing them, really helped. So there's an action item for you. I really hope you'll think about making that list, thinking about those four categories, and making sure you have a well-balanced network. So number 4 is, how do you want them to know you? Whether it's going to a networking event and introducing yourself for the first time, or thinking about your network and really looking at how to build those relationships, remember that branding is all about taking control. Branding is where you take control of how you want to be perceived. How do you want someone to experience you? Setting that vision in the future. This is what I want them to know about me. This is what I want them to feel about me. And this is what I want them to do with that information, right? Being strategic means being in control. So as you think about your network, look at these different categories of people. Look at the people you're spending your time curating on social media or in person. Think about how you want them to perceive you. Let's say you're going to a networking event, whether it's a job fair, a chamber of commerce meeting, a trade or industry association meeting, and you're walking in completely off, cold. Do you have a really good elevator pitch put together? Do you have in your mind how you want people to perceive you once you've walked away from that conversation? You only get one chance to make a first impression. And if this is a new relationship, it's really important to think through how you want that impression to come across. If it's a relationship you already have, then ask yourself, do they know what I do? Do they know the value of what I offer? And is there any work I need to do to shore that up? Because how you want them to know you is up to you. Perception will happen, right? We form perception, we form judgment, whether we think about it or not. And other people's perception of us is what they use to decide our value. So if you're not driving that, if you're not in control of that, and you're leaving that to someone else, well, you're giving up a lot of power. So what I do is I look at my network and I think these people return value because they know who I am and what I stand for. But I might have people in my network who strategically I've been cultivating that relationship, but there hasn't been any direct value yet. And I might ask myself, do they know what I do? Do they know where I can add value? And do I need to do something to fix that? And I might be more intentional about the kinds of conversations I have, the kinds of topics I introduce. Think about the opportunities you're attracting. Where are they coming from? And if there's a pocket where you're not getting a lot of opportunity, what can you do to nurture that relationship a little more thoughtfully? Maybe you need to be more direct. Maybe you need to be less direct, right? It's all about figuring out the nuance of where the opportunities are coming from and how to grow that. And I know this sounds really thoughtful and intentional and strategic and less natural and organic. And it is, because this, like I said, this is going to take a lot of time. And I've heard wonderful examples of people who've spent this time and worked their network in intentional, strategic, and thoughtful ways, thinking about the people that they know, thinking about how they want to be perceived, and opportunities just flood. My clients always tell me it's like magic. All of a sudden, I'm getting these referrals. It's like magic. All of a sudden, these people are introducing me using the right words. Well, it's not magic, it's strategy and it's branding. So it's okay if this feels a little bit uncomfortable. But as long as you're balancing the relationship and you're paying attention to what you can do for that person as much as what they can do for you, then it's working. So, number 5, how do you break the ice? That, for some people, is the hardest part. I remember years ago, my husband and I went to one of his company parties. It was his company party. It was at some ballpark. I remember it was really cool to see behind the scenes. And I walked in with him and I just started introducing myself to people. And he would say, "Oh, there's my boss." And I'm like, "Let's go meet your boss. Let's go say hi to them." He worked for a huge company at the time. And he said to me on the way home afterwards, he goes, "How come that's so easy for you?" He said, I just want to hug the wallpaper. Like, I don't want to meet people and expose myself and make myself vulnerable and have them possibly reject me. I said, "It's not that it's easy for me. It's that I make it my job. I know that when I walk into a conversation, most people aren't comfortable. So even if I'm uncomfortable, I make it my job to meet people, to be approachable, to have them see my authenticity, my gratitude, my generosity, and be welcoming as if I'm the host." And I knew it wasn't my party, but that's a responsibility I assume, knowing that whether it's that researcher that I met years ago who was hugging that cocktail table in the back of the room, terrified to be there, or somebody I just hadn't met yet, if they reject me, if they say no and they walk away, I don't take it personally because they don't know me. They might see somebody across the room that they'd rather talk to. Maybe they were waiting for that person, or maybe something about my approach didn't feel right to them. That's perfectly fine. I'll find the next person. And I always make sure I have an elevator pitch ready. So think about your elevator pitch, the way you're going to introduce yourself to a stranger. Now, if you're networking with people that you know your elevator pitch is going to look a little different. But when you're meeting somebody who you don't know, think about how you'll introduce yourself. The formula that I recommend for people is first, introduce your name and what you do, right? Not the complicated, covert, intricate job title that you have that nobody outside of your industry would understand, but just tell people what you do. Like, what kind of work do you do? Second, color it and flavor it with your brand. Why do you do that kind of work? What are you passionate about in that kind of work? What makes it interesting, what you do and how you got into that work? And third, give a quick example or anecdote or testimonial about what you do and why you do it. So first, what do you do? Second, why do you do that kind of work? And third, what's interesting about what you do? That's a quick and easy elevator pitch. You're going to make sure you ask the other person about themselves, and the small talk starts. The conversation starts. Another tip I have for breaking the ice and making small talk is think about something that you could easily and comfortably talk about with a stranger. You might think about current events. And with that, I will put a caveat. I would stay away from topics that are highly charged, topics that are political, religious, very sensitive. And we've got plenty of them going on in the world and in the US right now. Those are topics that are best left to intimate conversations with people that you know and trust and can really have a meaningful discussion with. In a first time meeting someone, if you brought up a headline that was provocative or controversial, you don't know where the other person falls. You don't know how sensitive that topic is for them. And it's a really awkward way to start the conversation. So think about more current events, right? Maybe it is the weather. We're having a heat wave here in Colorado. That's an easy thing for me to talk about. Maybe you're talking about the topic of the conference or something really exciting that's going to be happening at the trade show. If it's a job fair, you might talk about a recent statistic that you read about unemployment or this great resignation. But having something in your back pocket that you can comfortably and confidently talk about is a great way to break the ice. Remember, the other person might have a different reaction. So if they do, let them off the hook. And last but not least, as you're networking, even as you're breaking the ice, as you're curating the relationships with these people, it's really important to be other focused. We're talking about your network, your strategic approach, your thoughtful and meaningful ability to build a brand that is controlled and intentional. But there's another person involved. And that other person has needs too. Whether they're strategically and intentionally networking or not, we have to be paying attention to what they need and what they care about. So ask as many questions as you do talk about yourself. It's really important. Nobody wants to feel like they're part of a monologue, an observer of a monologue. We all want to feel like we're part of a dialogue. Even if we meet, we have that introductory conversation and we never see each other again. Leave a good impression. Think about your positive personal brand. Think about strategic networking as part of your growth over your career and over your life.